What happens when a time-traveling hero visits a future where his father failed to save humanity from extinction? And closer to home, can Peter Parker handle the emotional fallout when Mary Jane finally breaks up under the pressure of her abusive father? Welcome back, Comic Crusaders, to the Ordered Omnibus. We're kicking off April of 2004 with a heavy dose of reality, both cosmic and domestic. We're diving into a dystopian timeline with Captain Marvel, dealing with a heartbreaking runaway situation in the Ultimate Spider-Man, and finally we're cracking open X-Men Unlimited. Now, if you're wondering why we need another X-Men title, well, this anthology series is crucial. It steps away from the big team battles to give the supporting cast their moment in the sun, starting with the secret spy history of Sage. It's a roller coaster of emotions today, so before we dive in, I need you to massacre that mouse button to manifest the momentum, mobilize your mates to the message module to magnify the meaning, and manipulate those metal markers to maintain your mastery of the mythosphere. So, let's get her done. Exiles, Volume 1, Issue 42. We kick things off in what feels like a typical teenage drama, but the tension's already bubbling under the surface, waiting to explode. TJ Wagner, aka Nocturne, is absolutely vibing with this classic teenage angst, feeling like her dad Nightcrawler is trying to mold her into a soldier rather than letting her be herself. He drags Kitty Pryde to watch her band, The Butt Monkeys, which is an absolute circus of a name, struggle through the rehearsal of neo-techno thrash noise that leaves Kitty physically cringing. It's a moment of deceptive calm, creating a false sense of security as TJ heads to the salon to get her hair braided in the way she knows will drive her father crazy. But while they discuss tattoos and philosophy of being an X-Men, the narrative gears are already grinding towards a catastrophic shift that is about to shatter this Wednesday's afternoon piece. The situation goes from 0 to 100 in insanity when Cyclops, looking like he's finally snapped, blows a massive hole in the mansion wall. He isn't alone. He's brought a heavy hitter squad including the Corrupted Rogue, Radioactive Man, and White Dwarf, and they proceed to absolutely ragdoll the mansion's defenses. This isn't a friendly spar, it's an escalation of desperation where Scott Summers is playing for keeps, accusing the X-Men of leaving messes for others to clean up. The darkest moment hits when we see the charred remains of Lucian, a young mutant Cyclops deems a walking time bomb, proving that this version of Scott is completely abandoned the dream of a cold, hard pragmatism. He's verbally tearing Logan apart both metaphorically and literally, dismantling his exo-harness and leaving the feral mutant helpless on the floor. It all comes down to TJ stepping up when the heavy hitters are down for the count. He rallies the young students, refusing to let them panic, and takes down the blob by jumping on his back and proving that immovable objects still have brains that can be scrambled. But the real clincher happens in the main hall, where Cyclops is moments away from executing a defenseless Wolverine for crimes he hasn't even committed yet. In a stroke of genius combat improvisation, the Nocturne possesses the unconscious Armageddon and uses his telekinesis to pilot Logan's paralyzed arms like a metal puppet. He forces Logan's claws right into Scott's chest, dropping the former leader and ending a threat in a brutal, decisive moment that proves she's not just Nightcrawler's daughter, she's an X-Men in her own right. Runaways, Volume 1, Issue 11. Saga Squad, things at the Wilder residence have gone from a tense meeting to a full-blown crisis. The Pride is debating a total retcon, mind-wiping their children, which the Yorks point out that, usually leaves the subject's brain dead. It's a stark reminder of just how villainous these parents really are. Jeffrey Wilder interrupts the squabbling to reveal that he's brought in an outside help via Lieutenant Flores. But the real shocker comes from Catherine Wilder. She isn't interested in paying the cop for their service. She takes their revolver and shoots him in the knee. It's a definitive statement that the time for proxies and back channels is over. The Pride is done hiding behind others, and they're getting ready to get their hands dirty. Now, while their parents are escalating the violence, the Runaways are out in Van Nuys trying to stop the graffiti artists from tagging the Stark Enterprise billboard. It's adorably low stakes, with Nico referring to the Vandals as junior fascists. But the mood shifts instantly when Cloak and Dagger drop in. The difference in power levels is laughable. Alex tries to talk his way out of it, dismissing the duo as B-list heroes. But the fight kicks off anyway. Chase gets aggressive, and Carolina makes the rookie mistake of blasting Cloak with light, which is exactly what he feeds on. In seconds, the kids are overwhelmed, proving that reading about superheroes and actually fighting them are two very different things. The battle ends almost as quickly as it began, with Cloak absorbing Alex, Nico, Carolina, and Chase into the Dark Force dimension. Despite their capture, Cloak admits to Dagger that he senses no stain of blood on their souls, though he does detect a powerful darkness in one of them. A nice bit of foreshadowing for Alex. But just when it looks like the game is over, the cavalry arrives in the most unexpected form. Gert Yorks and Molly Hay, the latter finally sporting her homemade superhero costume, step up to Old Lace to face down the vigilantes. It sets the stage for a dinosaur versus shadow showdown that you absolutely do not want to miss.
Supreme Powers, Volume 1, Issue 6 and 7. Hello, my archivists, and today we're executing a necessary course correction. We realize we left a massive gap in the Supreme Powers log, so we're smashing issues 6 and 7 together in a single high-velocity breakdown, just so we can set the continuity record straight. We start with Stanley Stewart, the Blur, finally getting a costume that can survive his speed. But here's the kicker, it isn't some noble gift from a mentor. It's a corporate-sponsored racing suit designed to protect the asset. It sets the tone immediately that this isn't the Justice League, it's a liability management strategy. Stanley steps into the limelight reading a prepared statement while Hyperion watches from the sidelines, realizing he's looking at the only other person on the planet who might understand the crushing isolation of his existence. This leads to a summit at a horse ranch that feels like a dark mirror of the world's finest. Stanley and Hyperion sit down to chew the fat and trade war stories, but the camaraderie is underscored by a terrifying realization. Hyperion is starting to dream. Memories of floating in space of a life before the government found him. The official narrative he's been force-fed his entire life, starting to crumble. It's gaslighting on a planetary scale, and you can practically hear the panic in the Pentagon as Hyperion realizes his entire entity might be a fabrication. It's the quiet before the storm, a moment of calm conversation that drops a bigger bombshell on the status quo than a dozen punch-ups. True believers, while the heroes are talking, the story takes a wild turn into sci-fi horror. Dr. Fraser and Dr. Stedman discover that Hyperion's ship wasn't just a transport vessel, it was a biological Trojan horse. They find empty compartments, vents designed to release a payload into the atmosphere. This is the moment the genre shifts from superhero deconstruction to pure containment thriller. The realization that the ship deliberately hid these compartments suggests a malevolent intelligence at work. It validates every paranoia we've discussed. You do not bring an alien artifact to Earth without assuming it has a diverse portfolio of ways to kill you. The ship isn't a vehicle, it's an active hostile participant. And the consequences of that payload manifest in Joe Ledger, and it's absolute nightmare fuel. We see Ledger waking up, not as a man, but as a glowing, possessed vessel of cosmic energy. He attacks Dr. Stedman, levitating with a cold, detached curiosity, calming to hear every broadcast and every word spoken on the planet. This isn't a superhero origin, it's a hostile takeover of a human soul. The entity inside him isn't malicious in a human sense. It's simply operating on a level of existence that views humanity as data to process. Stedman survives, but the message is clear. The government didn't create a super soldier, they incubated a cosmic entity that they have absolutely zero hopes of controlling. Finally, the leash snaps completely, and Hyperion tries to play the role of a benevolent god of Chicago, lecturing Nighthawk on broadening his horizons, only to get brutally stonewalled. Nighthawk hits him with a harsh reality check on systematic racism and privilege, leaving Hyperion spurned and disillusioned. He goes rogue, flying to China to follow a cryptic lead, and the confrontation with Agent Bryce is pure kinetic energy. Bryce yells and threatens, but Hyperion just calmly asks, well, what can you do to stop me? The answer is, well, nothing. Hyperion tracks the signal to Africa, leading to a supersonic confrontation with a possessed Joe Ledger. The government is out of moves, the assets are fighting each other, and the world is about to find out what happens when gods go to war.
Thanos, Volume 1, Issue 6. The climax hits an absolute fever pitch as the void closes in, with Hunger prematurely celebrating his victory while Thanos proves he's always 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. And just as the entity prepares to consume them, Pip the Troll, of all people, bamps in to teleport Galactus out of the kill zone, saving the Devourer of Souls in a move that no one saw coming. Meanwhile, Thanos executes a masterstroke of tactical genius, cutting the ship's power to stall Hunger just long enough to reclaim the Soul Gem and trigger his real trap. He doesn't just flee, he weaponizes gravity itself by teleporting the entire mass of the old Rigel 3 directly into the gravitational pull of Rigel 18. It's an escalation that results in planetary collision of biblical proportions, creating a shockwave that obliterates the immediate threat while Thanos and Pip barely escape the blast radius. In the aftermath of the Celestial Demolition Derby, Thanos teleports down to the shattered remain of the two worlds to find Galactus battered, broken, and genuinely humbled for the first time in eons. It's a surreal image to see the world leader laid out by the impact, but instead of finishing him off, Thanos offers him a cold, philosophical lecture of the nature of survival. He warns Galactus that his mindless consumption is a strategic weakness, a flaw that will eventually cause the universe's greatest powers to unite and end him permanently. As the Mad Titan departs satisfied with his victory, we see that the threat isn't entirely neutralized. A tiny, nay, microscopic fragment of the Hunger survives, attaching itself to Galactus's armor like a parasite. It's a horrifying reminder that cosmic horrors are rarely defeated completely. They just wait for the next opportunity to defeat. The narrative wraps with the restoration of the status quo, as Adam Warlock is fully reformed with his soul gem back in his forehead, offering his gratitude to the man who is usually his greatest enemy. They part ways not just as rivals, but as temporary allies who understand the burden of protecting the universe, vibing on a level of mutual respect that few other characters share. But the ending brings us back to the classic Thanos dark humor when a drunken Pip the Troll teleports back onto the ship expecting a ride home. Thanos, having reached his quota for benevolence for this century, immediately orders his robots to dump the troll into the garbage disposal unit. It's a perfect capstone for the arc, proving that while Thanos might save the universe, there are strict limits to his patience for annoyances. Now we're about to shift gears from the cosmic scale down to the street level with the X-Men. But before we get to the heavy family drama in Uncanny and Thor, we're going to take a detour into the X-Men Unlimited. And a lot of you asked, why does Marvel publish these anthology books when the schedule is already packed? Well, let's step between the panels to find out. Between the panels. Alright, Archivists, let's take a deep breath and step away from the continuity deep end for a second. We'll be covering the X-Men Unlimited, Volume 2, Number 1, and you might be asking yourself, well, why? Why does Marvel publish a book that doesn't push the main plot forward? Why do we need a random heist story about Sage when the X-Men are busy fighting for their future in the new X-Men? And the answer lies in the mechanics of the comic book publishing. We call this an anthology format, and for the big two publishers, it serves 3 critical functions that keep the industry gears grinding. The first one is the proving ground. Now, books like X-Men Unlimited are the ultimate testing labs. Marvel isn't going to hand the keys to the Uncanny X-Men flagship to a rookie writer or a fresh artist right off the gate. This is a recipe for disaster. Instead, they throw them on an anthology book. It's a low-risk environment where the editors can see if the creator can hit a deadline, nail the character voices, and tell a coherent story without wrecking the main continuity. If they survive the anthology, they get promoted. If they tank, well, they just get a backup story. Purpose 2. The B-side. The main books are crowded. When you have a team book like X-Treme X-Men or the Avengers, the A-listers, your Wolverines, your Captain Americas, suck up all the oxygen out of the room. There just isn't enough panel real estate to explore the inner lives of the supporting cast. The anthology format is where the B-listers get the shine. It allows the writers to tell a deeper, character-driven story about Sage, Bishop, or the Iceman that would never fit into the pacing of a blockbuster event. It adds the texture to the universe and makes it feel lived in, rather than just the stage for the big battles. And then part 3, the inventory safety net. Now, here's the brutal reality about production. Comics are a monthly grind, and sometimes creative teams miss deadlines. Life happens. Anthology stories are often evergreen, meaning that they are not tied to a specific month or event. They can sit in the drawer for a year and still make sense when they're published. Having a stack of finished anthology stories gives Marvel a safety net, ensuring that they'll always have product on the shelves, even if the main artist breaks their hand or the writer gets writer's block. So, when you read a book like X-Men Unlimited, don't write it off as filler, and sometimes that's where the real gems like Sage's spy history are hidden. Now back to the show. X-Men Unlimited, Volume 2, Issue 1. This time, Wednesday Warriors, we open this issue with a masterclass in multitasking from Sage, who proves she's arguably the most dangerous asset the X-Men have. She's casually chatting with Bishop about Jackie Chan movies and playing chess against a grandmaster, all while breaking into the office of Valdemir Zhivago, a former Hellfire Club shareholder. The action sequence is incredible because she doesn't just fight off Zhivago's bodyguard, a Kung Du master named Chung Yu, she verbally dissects his technique while physically dismantling him. She caps off the heist by defenestrating herself and executing a perfect dive into the pool below, relying on kinetic memory she observed years ago to survive the fall. The real bombshell drops when she opens the envelope she stole. It contains a photograph of young Sage and Charles Xavier, both dressed in military fatigues and heavily armed. This effectively retcons their relationship, implying that she was a soldier in his personal war long before she was a student or a spy. While Sage wrestles with her hidden history, the narrative shifts to a Halloween tale featuring a young man named Andy. And for one night, that beast-like appearance isn't a target for hate speech, it's just a cool costume, allowing him to bond with a local girl named Amanda and feel a fleeting sense of normalcy. But in the true X-Men fashion, the peace doesn't last. When kidnappers snatch Amanda's little sister, Andy unleashes his feral power to run down their van, rip the doors open, and save the girl while Emma Frost telepathically neutralizes the thugs. You would think that makes him a hero, but the ending delivers a gut-wrenching reality check. The moment the danger is over, the crowd looks at him with absolute disgust, and even Amanda coldly remarks that he's going back to where he belongs. It's a tragic reminder for mutants that saving the day doesn't cure the world's prejudice. Uncanny X-Men, Volume 1, Issue 439. So, my fellow fanatics, we're back in Kentucky, and the feud between the Guthries and the Cabots is escalating from petty squabbles to full-blown domestic terrorism. Chester Cabot has taken the local sheriff to an old mine where he's discovered a cache of high-tech armor. Now, those of you who are deep in the lore, these suits are actually left over from the skirmish the X-Men had with a religious cult back in the Uncanny X-Men Annual number 95. It's a deep cut, but it serves a terrifying purpose here. Chester isn't just looking to intimidate the Guthries anymore, he's planning a massacre. He intends to use the Finders Keepers weaponry to wipe out the entire family and frame it as a random supervillain attack, proving that hate makes people justify absolutely horrific actions. While the adults are planning murder, the younger generation is reenacting Romeo and Juliet. Julia Cabot is staring out the window, pining for Josh Guthrie, much to the shock of her grandmother. But the real emotional weight hits when Josh actually flies up to her window. It's a beautifully tragic scene where they realize that their love is the only thing that makes sense in this world filled with bigotry. Josh drops this incredible line about how hate is a choice, but love is a gift, and they decide to run away together. It highlights the tragedy of the situation that these two kids just want to be together, completely unaware that Julia's father is currently suiting up in a power armor to murder Josh's family. Back at the farm, we get some much-needed character growth between the X-Men. Warren Worthington finally sits down with Wolverine and apologizes for treating him like trash for years. Seeing Angel admit that he was wrong and that his intuitive judgment was clouded by prejudice is a massive step forward. But Warren isn't out of the woods yet, because Lucinda Guthrie corners him in the kitchen to talk to him about his rocky relationship with her daughter. It's a reminder that while Warren might be a high-flying hero, he is terrible at communicating with women in his life. The issue rushes towards a violent conclusion at Jacobson's Pond. Josh and Julia meet up ready to start their life together, believing that they've escaped the cycle of hatred. They share this tender moment, promising that forever isn't long enough. But the reality of their world crashes the party. Just as they embrace, the Cabots arrive fully decked out in their scavenged power armor. It's a heartbreaking cliffhanger because we know exactly what Chester Cabot is capable of, and we know these two teenagers are standing directly in the path of a man who values his prejudice more than he values his own daughter's happiness. Thor, Volume 2, Issue 74.
The narrative opens with a setup that feels more like a classic spy thriller, but the tragedy is baked in from the start. Resistance member Poryust purchases a weapon from a dealer completely unaware that the seller is an agent of Loki, meaning that the rebellion is walking into a trap before it even takes a step. This coincides with a massive shift in power in the palace where Thor informs Loki that he has to enter Odin's sleep, leaving the throne dangerously exposed. Meanwhile, in Arizona, Magni goes full one-man army to invade the reconditioning center, tearing through defenses to rescue Jor-Dal. But the victory is hollow because he finds her completely mind-wiped and unresponsive. A tragic realization that the system has already broken her before it could even get there. Back at the capital, the Resistance decides to go for broke with a frontal assault on Thor's palace to serve as a loud, chaotic diversion. Kaya, vibing in the Scarlet Witch costume, leads the charge alongside Poryust, creating an absolute circus outside the gate to draw attention away from Magni, who's dragging the shell of Jor-Dal to a hidden ally. It's a bold play, but they're completely outmatched by Loki, who anticipates the move and captures the leadership without even really breaking a sweat. The entire sequence highlights the terrifying efficiency of Thor's regime, and while Magni manages to slip away, the neck of the resistance movement is snapped in a single decisive stroke. The real drama explodes in the royal chambers where Thor seals his fate by taking the sleeping elixir just as Thialfi enters to assassinate him. It's a brutal, intimate confrontation where a weakened Thor tries to fight back, but the drugs leave him sluggish enough that Thialfi can actually defeat him in single combat. The assassin has the king of Asgard dead to rights, ready to deliver the killing blow, but he forgets the wild card in the room. The Enchantress intervenes at the last second, releasing the legendary wolf Gary. Gary. The wolf hits Thialfi like a freight train, absolutely ragdolling him and tearing the assassin apart, ending the coup in a splash of violence that proves that Thor's rule is protected by monsters as much as magic. Ultimate Spider-Man, Volume 1, Issue 53. Peter wakes up to absolute chaos in the Parker household. It isn't a supervillain attack this time, but something far more grounded. Mary Jane is missing and Aunt May is frantic, revealing that MJ's mother called in a panic because MJ took her money and disappeared. Peter, doing a terrible job of acting surprised, bolts out of the house in his pajamas. He heads straight for an abandoned warehouse, a private hiding place the two of them share. He finds MJ curled up on the floor, writing in a journal, trying to escape the toxicity of her home life. She opens up about her father not just as a strict parent, but as a miserable man who threatens to ship her off to another school just to make everyone around him as unhappy as he is. It's a heartbreaking scene where she suggests they run away and get married, but Peter, ever the anchor, tells her not yet, promising that he isn't going anywhere. While dealing with his personal life, Peter also cracks the case on Black Cat. Using the Daily Bugle's resources, he connects the dots between Jack Hardy, a known cat burglar, and Felicia Hardy, an employee of Fisk Enterprises. He realizes this isn't a heist for profit, it's a revenge mission. Felicia has cornered the Kingpin in his own office, intending to make him pay for her father's death in prison. But Fisk is unimpressed. He brutally deconstructs her worldview, telling her that her father wasn't a martyr or a legend. He was just a loser thief who got caught. And to make matters worse, Fisk has his assassin Elektra ready to end the conversation permanently. The confrontation escalates when Felicia reveals she stole the priceless stone tablet that Fisk is desperate to recover. Spider-Man crashes the party trying to save her, but Felicia is driven by pure spite. Realizing how much the tablet means to Fisk, she throws it out the window, watching it sink into the river just to hurt him. Elektra throws a sigh, striking Felicia and sending her plummeting off the roof. Spider-Man dives after her, horrified at the lethal turn of events, leaving Fisk fuming in his office. And the issue closes with a somber reveal that changes how we view the Kingpin. He visits his wife Vanessa, who's lying in a coma. We learn that he didn't want the tablet for power or wealth. He believed that the ancient magic could wake her up. And Felicia didn't just throw away a rock, she threw away Fisk's last hope for his wife. He sits by her bedside, promising that while the heroes mock their happiness, he will punish them all. It's a chilling ending that adds a layer of tragic humanity to the Marvel's biggest crime lord. X-Treme X-Men, Volume 1, Issue 41. We kick things off in a dungeon, where Bishop is having a really bad day. Elias Bogan, a thorn in the team's side for a while now, is dosing Bishop with a drug called Rave. And for those not in the know, Rave pushes mutant powers to their limit by inducing a euphoric state. Bishop breaks free and absolutely wrecks Bogan's henchmen, guys like Manacle and Rolling Thunder. But it's all part of the villain's plan. Bogan phases through Bishop's attack and literally invades his mind. He bypasses Lucas's formidable psychic defenses by regressing his consciousness to childhood, while effectively turning a veteran X-Men into a drooling, obedient puppet. And back at the beach house, the team is falling apart. Rogue and Gambit realize that Bishop likely let himself be captured to track Bogan, but the stress causes Rogue to snap at Sage. This leads to a brutal, close-quarter fight where Sage pulls a gun and Rogue pulls a knife. And it takes Sam Guthrie to step in and be the adult in the room. Cannonball deduces that Bogan never gets his hands dirty, he uses pawns. And he realizes that Bishop is going to be used as a weapon against them, and that they need to take out the telepath controlling him if they want to survive. We finally get the deep lore explanation for why Bogan hates Sage so much. It goes back to her days as Tessa in the Hellfire Club, specifically referencing the era around X-Men 132. Bogan lost a high-stakes poker game to Sebastian Shaw because of Sage, and he's been obsessed with owning her ever since. We even get a holographic cameo from Storm reminding Sage that she saved her from Bogan years ago. But the nostalgic trip is cut short by a terrifying reality of their situation. The issue closes with Bishop armed to the teeth and completely mind-wiped, standing ready to slaughter the only family he has left.
We're wrapping things up on a somber note today, from Genisville witnessing the ashes of the Earth to Kingpin revealing the tragic humanity behind his crime empire. And finally, young Andy realizes that prejudice doesn't take a holiday. This batch was all about the harsh truths our heroes have to face. So, join us next time as we continue our journey through April of 2004. We've got more twists, more turns, and hopefully a little more hope on the horizon. If you enjoyed this deep dive, I need you to massacre that mouse button to manifest the momentum, mobilize your mates to the message module to magnify the meaning, and manipulate those metal markers to maintain your mastery of the Mythospheres.
These are the apps we'll be focusing on next week. Same ordered time, same ordered omnibus.